Welcome to Creepin' It Real. I am Judah. I finally got to see a movie that has been on my watch list for a while. I'm going to take these headphones off. I saw some thumbnails for this floating around online, and I got to tell you, the visuals that I was seeing in these thumbnails was not really hitting it for me. But I was hearing some good buzz. I wasn't being overwhelmed with the buzz I was hearing, but I was hearing few bits and pieces here and there about this movie. And I started getting a little excited, kind of a hopeful optimism. I have mentioned in the past that when it comes to horror, I'm not a fan of slashers at all. I love monster movies. And after that, I dig folklore type horror movies. And if a horror movie is set in another country or somewhere where the accents sound different, for some reason I am able to more disassociate with real life and get more submersed into the film. This is from what I remember, an Irish film, so we got that going for it. And it's not necessarily like real life folklore, but it's kind of based in kind of a folklorish type setting. Like I mentioned, I saw some thumbnails for this, and I just wasn't into it. It just wasn't grabbing me. But then I kind of heard some good stuff about it, and so I was like,
telling you that there is someone
let's give this
in
a
there
try.
with you.
And it's directed by someone named Damien McCarthy. The first, well, I'll hold that.
Why do you
later.
want it?
So it's about this married
took my
couple.
sister's life.
They've purchased this
I wanna
house.
see
They're
what was going
renovating
through his
it. The husband is a psychiatrist. He works at almost like an institute where they hold their patients.
You said I should
that
visit
have
on
been
Danny's anniversary.
committed. His wife is staying at this place that
The
they're
thought of another
renovating,
patient showing up the
and
front
she's
door
there
here.
alone,
Would you allow them
taking
in?
care of stuff. And she has a twin
course not.
sister who's
My
blind,
sister would never
who's
allow
like a
a strange
psychic,
man
and she
into her
also
home in the middle of
owns
the
a
night.
store that was left to her by her mother that's filled with
She's saying some weird things to
curiosities,
me, Dad.
She's clearly not well.
things
Do you
that
mind
what
staying
she
out
says
here
are
alone at night?
haunted. So
I'm just telling you what I
the-
saw.
Danny's
the
ghost.
sister that is married
My
to this
dead wife
doctor,
is
she
not
gets
haunting
murdered
this house.
one night when she's at the house. And this is kind of where the story
What is
really
this?
begins. It's definitely a ghost story, but it's somewhat in a less intense way a
This is not
who
real.
did it mystery. And I got to tell you,
As I've always
I
believed.
will give you my score for this shortly.
There's nothing
And
that
it's
can't
going
be
to seem
explained.
like a low score, but if you watch the rest of my reviews, I would give this movie a 7 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. Will I ever watch it again? Probably never. But I would recommend this to people. I told you it was directed by a guy named Damien McCarthy. Now, when we visit the shop of the blind sister, her shop of curiosities, this was before I knew anything about the director. They're going through the curiosities and a kind of a sweeping pan, and you see this rabbit up on the shelf, and it resembled strongly this rabbit right here from a movie called Caveat. Now, I looked it up, and lo and behold, Damien directed and wrote Caveat as well. And I enjoyed Caveat. Very low budget. And in Caveat, the rabbit has drums. And in Oddity, the rabbit has cymbals. But definitely it was a nod, 100% to Caveat. And that helped me make that connection of the director. Now, speaking of Caveat, that's another one I would suggest to people, and I might rewatch that. But at the same time, some of the characters in that movie were making the dumbest decisions. It definitely, when I was watching Caveat, I was like, why are they doing such stupid things? But I still enjoyed the movie, and I would still tell people to check it out. Now, in Oddity, people weren't making as many stupid decisions. So that was good. And I would still tell people to watch it, even though I probably would never watch it again. Just the opening, we might get into spoilers here. So just be warned. I'm going to say spoilers now. The opening sequence before the title screen came, that to me was almost like a perfect short film. It scared me. Not like watching it scared me, but seeing the situation, then it made me think, what would I do in that situation? And the fact that it put me in that mindset, that terrified me. I mentioned that this woman is at this home that they're renovating. Okay, she has a tent set up in the house because there's no bed or anything, and there's no heat, so they have a tent, sleeping bags. She's sleeping in the tent inside the building. So, and they get almost no service. There's like one spot in the house upstairs. There's like this little spot where she can get service. She can't find her phone. She's thinking that she may have left it in her car. So she leaves the door open to this home, walks out to her car, and she's looking through her car trying to find her phone. She can't find it. Then so her back is towards the door. She goes back in to the house. She shuts the door and locks the door, and she's just about her business. But then there's like a knock at the door, and there's this little sliding door. She opens it up, and there's a man out there. He has one glass eye. It's very obvious that it's a glass eye, and it's kind of freaky. And she's like, "What are you doing here?" And he says to her, he's like, "I saw you outside, getting in your car. And when your back was turned, somebody went into your house." And she's like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah, you got to get out of there. Or let me in, and I'll take care of the situation." And she's like, "I don't think so." And then she says to him, "If you don't leave right now, I'm going to call the police." And he goes, yes, do that. Call the police right now." But then she's kind of like, "I don't have my phone." Why she would tell him that she doesn't have her phone is beyond me. But she kind of starts to be like, "Oh, well, he clearly didn't mind me saying I was going to call the police, so maybe I can trust this guy." So then she says to him, "Okay, if I open up the door, what are you going to do?" And he's like, "I'll just come in, I'll check the place out." And she says, "And if no one's here?" He's like, I'll leave and I'll go away." And she starts walking towards the door, okay? And she's reaching towards the doorknob. And then that's when the title screen comes, and that portion of the story is done. To me, that was so amazing. If that was just a short story and it ended right there, it was just so amazing. Leaving you with that. Was there somebody in the house? Is she going to let this dude in? Is he safe? Is he going to kill her? What? Oh my gosh, that in its of itself was just so amazing to me. But obviously the movie continues. Now, I got to say, I really enjoyed the lighting. I really enjoyed the aesthetics. I thought the acting was, serviceable. Overall, this was just a good movie. And I can understand some people, well, why just a 7 out of a 10? I don't know. A 9 out of 10 score, your movie has to be like almost perfect. And there are very few movies out there that I think can actually take those kind of scores. And when you got people throwing out 10s for movies, I'm just kind of like, I don't think so. I don't think so. So a 7 for me is like a really good score. I enjoyed this movie. Now, there's this full, like, life-size human wooden man involved in this movie. And the only reason I know it's wooden is because the synopsis says it's wooden. But for me, if there's a drawback for me, I never picked up that this object was a wooden man. I thought it was leather. I didn't know if it was supposed to be some kind of like a dried out mummy. I had no idea what this was supposed to be, other than it was human shaped and it had some kind of a screaming type look on its face. There was a jump scare. I didn't feel cheated. I didn't think it was cheat. I felt it was deserved. The horror of this movie, even though it was a ghost story, perhaps, or the terror of not knowing what is in the dark. That is what scared me when it came to this wooden man. Like, you would turn your back, then you'd look back, and he would be in a different position. That kind of stuff did not scare me. What scared me was this woman being in this home and not knowing if there was another person in there. Here's the spoilers. There was another person in there. This is where the jump scare comes. I think it was deserved, because if you were in that situation, you would have crapped your pants as well. And that was the fare for me. I live in a big house, 10,000 square feet. It's an old school. And quite often when I'm there alone, if I hear something, it's terrifying. You don't know. I've said this before with multiple. I've gone through a lot of housemates, and when you have someone living with you, if you hear a noise in the middle of the night or something, you kind of just convince yourself, oh, it's probably my housemate doing something. But when those housemates would leave, and I would have like this 3-month period of, not having anyone in my home, when you hear those noises, you don't have anything to fall back on to be like, oh, it's probably just so-and-so doing something. At that point, it becomes terrifying because you're like, oh crap, is someone in my house? Okay. And that was the fare that I got from this movie. It was good. They did a good job of that. The ending was, they leave it up to you in a way, not as bad as like say Inception, but it definitely leaves it at a place where it cuts off and you're not totally sure what the outcome is. You're assuming, and I think you could heavily assume in the right direction. And based off some interviews I saw with Damian McCarthy, he definitely says that his opinion is it ends the certain way, the same way that I would say 90% of people are going to assume it ends. This is a good movie. It's not perfect. It's a good movie. It's low budget. It's a, like I mentioned, ghost story, murder mystery, cursed objects type stuff. You may not like the ending, but I think it's kind of ends the way it needs to. In a lot of movies, not just horror movies, but in a lot of movies, there are certain conveniences that occur. And it seems absurd. Like, oh, well, that was awfully convenient. And some movies just let it be. They're just like, we're not even going to kind of explain it. We're just going to let the convenience be the convenience. But then there's other movies that they at least put the effort into trying to help explain how that convenience worked. For me, famously, in World War Z with Brad Pitt, I hated that movie. I thought it was crap. There's this one scene where he's carrying a crowbar. His crowbar is his protection. He goes into this little glass, room to get something. I can't remember what it was. And he puts the crowbar down, leans it on the side of the wall outside. And they were very specific to make sure you knew that he set the crowbar down outside of the room. As soon as he did this in this movie, I was like, oh, this is some BS right here. I'm like, they just made that so obvious, but that was such a stupid decision on his part because obviously something's going to happen and he's not going to have his crowbar, and the crowbar would have been the perfect thing. But no, they want to make sure that you understand that he set this crowbar down like a dumbhead. So then it goes on, and obviously the thing happens, and oh no, I don't have my crowbar because I'm stupid. Durr. So there's things like that even though they try to, it still just comes off as dumb. In this movie, at the beginning, because she's working on, they're working on redoing this home, they show the wife working on and I'm going to use this word lightly. It's like a trap door, where it's not really like a lever pulling trap door. It's just, this wasn't really a home. It looked like it maybe was a barn before they're renovating it into a home. And some barns have spaces up above where you can push hay through. Okay. So she's essentially finishing this portion of the home, and she slides the square in to cover up where you would like throw hay through. Okay, and it makes sense because she's renovating and they're just showing her working on the house, and they show her, closing the hatch on this hay chute. I don't know if it's a hay chute. I'm just using things to help you understand. The whole rest of the movie plays out. You just put that in your brain as she's working on the house. It didn't seem unnatural. It didn't seem like they were leading you to something. Well, it pays off at the end. Whereas other movies would just be like, why is this random hole there? They wouldn't try to explain it. And like in World War Z, they didn't try to make it super obvious. They didn't hold your hand and try to walk you through it. They just showed you at the beginning. It made sense. She's working on the house. This might be a barn. She's closing this trap door. And it totally made sense. And for me, I really appreciated that. And for others, they might still be like, oh, well, that's stupid and that's convenient. But for me, it really worked. I really like this. I know 7 sounds like very minimal, but that coming across good horror movies is far and few between. We may enjoy watching the horror movies, but we all know that the majority of them are dog crap, and finding good ones is difficult. Like if the horror movie is not taking itself serious, then you can give it more freedom to be stupid and bad. But if you're going to be a serious horror movie, if you're going to take yourself seriously, it becomes much harder to achieve. And there's less forgiveness to be given within that frame. This one takes itself serious, and it succeeded on most fronts. Like I said, there's a few things that don't work for me, but on a whole, it's a good movie. It's just up to you now to watch it and then decide which parts work for you and which parts don't. And if there's somebody out there, since this is getting such good praise, I would love for somebody who just hates this movie to comment and give me their thoughts. I would love to understand, love to have you dissect it for me and show me why it's dog crap and not generally good. But I liked it. Thanks for watching. I'm Judah. This has been Creepin' It Real. See you later.